Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I stand here humbled before you. I thought I played this beautiful game, and then you go back and analyze it, and the computer tells me how bad I am. So, there's a lot to unpack in this game. We're going to get some interesting opening ideas, inviting trouble into the opening, knowing that it's going to be trouble for me, and doing it anyways. Always a good strategy. And then we're going to get into a lot of the middle game and then some fun end game tactics. I'm not going to go too crazy in depth here, but we are looking at a Vienna system against d6 for black. And coming out here with the bishop, one of the things, if you're going to trade this bishop, just know that your opponent has to take back with the f6 pawn, and he's going to have a permanently open f file. If you play the Vienna the way that I try to play it, we're trying to open up our f file. So I don't trade the bishop, I develop the queen. That way, if he takes my bishop, I'm totally fine taking back with the queen. We don't have to worry about that. So knight coming out to f6, normal stuff. What I don't want now is those two pieces teaming up on me here, putting pressure on the queen and having to block with a knight or an f3 pawn. So he develops this sort of Philidor system, is usually very passive, and I go ahead and play what I knew was an ill-advised f4. I played this knowing that there were several other better moves to play here, which I believe the computer will show you. d3 is totally fine in this position. If you're not the type of Vienna player that likes to force f4 like me, d3 is fine because after bishop takes, f3 takes, we have a nice little barricade or blockade on c4 and e4, and to break through, opponent will have to play c6 followed by d5, and he's going to have to take extra moves. So we're still totally fine not playing d3 here and just letting him capture the bishop. Also fine in this position is a4. But anyways, we're playing f4 here, trying to force a Vienna Gambit essentially. And so he takes, and we just build up this nice pawn structure. And we retake the pawn because I'm silly and I shouldn't have done that. The computer says that d5 is way better here, which I totally get. I was in such a hurry to just recapture this pawn, as a lot of players in my rating range are, and I don't think I gave full consideration to the move d5, which is fantastic. But still developing pieces. Not all is lost yet. Now opponent is playing c6. And now what's interesting to note is now that I don't have this pawn here anymore, it's up on d4, now he can take, and now when I bring the queen out, he's pushing a pawn, attacking my queen. So him taking the bishop in this case would lead to him being able to play d5, what you call with tempo, meaning it's a move I am forced to respond to, and black can take the initiative there with that. So I finally play d5, and of course, in this position, the computer yells at me and says, now d5 is not the best move. Taking his bishop would have been the best move, but we get to move the bishop back. We're putting pressure on our opponent. Our opponent crumbles a little bit and plays what the computer says is a mistake. So, okay, and triple castle, totally fine here. This rook can come over to the f file later. We've got this nice open f file. We can play g4 and start a little pawn walk. We're going to get some nice pressure on the king side over here. So triple castle is what we want. And our opponent just kind of trying to play what looks like a normal developing move, get the rook out to the file, x-raying the queen. This is not exactly the best move. I pull the queen out of the way. The computer wants me to take c6. I'm not against that. I don't want the bishop coming out here because my intention was to get my queen to f3, where she's often good in the Vienna, and I didn't want this bishop looking down through the pawn and x-raying my queen. So I decided I wanted to get my queen to the f3 square right away. So very well he takes, and I take back with the knight, and that's not necessarily bad. We haven't completely messed up yet. Pulling the bishop over. Again, if I take that pawn, he moves the bishop over. Developing the knight to e2, totally best. Developing this knight out, he should really fight to take my knight instead. Now I've got two of my knights in position. I have full claim of the d5 square, which is absolutely what I wanted. So even though I didn't play d5 at the right time, when the computer wanted me to, I still currently controlled the d5 square, which is fantastic. So he jumps in and he's thinking to himself, I'm going to fork Mike's queen and his bishop, and I'm awesome. And this is a blunder. This is a massive blunder, and it fails to a specific move. Go ahead and pause the video here. This is the move that I missed in the game, and it made the difference between me thinking I was playing this great game and finding out from the computer that I actually did not play the best move in this situation, and it made my victory more difficult to achieve later. Okay, so you've had a chance to pause. The best move here is bishop takes e5. So bishop takes e5, and it almost doesn't matter what black does here. White has something that's crushing. So if the pawn takes the bishop back, then we have knight f6 check. And after bishop takes f6, then we're just winning as queen. The really important thing to notice in these sequences is this X-ray pressure from the rook means that once that pawn is gone and we move our knight, he's in trouble. So we're supposed to approach this position and understanding which piece to recapture with. We're supposed to move through this position with that X-ray in mind. And there's one other really important X-ray that's going to help us work our way through this, and it's this X-ray right here. Okay, so bishop takes, and if knight takes d5 here, then we have bishop takes d5. And now we got a nice threat with the queen and the bishop, so our opponent has to recapture the bishop, which he does. And at that point, we can play rook d5. Rook d5 is the way to continue fighting for an advantage in this position. We're preserving the pin on the queen. If we took back with the knight instead, then he's free. He's almost free to capture here. Not quite, but he's almost free to recapture there. So taking with the rook here, preserving that pin, and now we can just stockpile, dogpile onto that pawn, and we can just go win that pawn. So now this pawn is going to be ours. Okay. Oddly enough, what the computer says, and I'm not sure that your opponent would find this, but we can run through it. What the computer says is black should take the pawn, and after we take, and the rook takes, that black should just fight from here. But this is just terrible for him. So going back, see if we can come back all the way. Queen goes to f3, he takes, I take, he comes for the pin, I'm just developing the knight. He comes in for this, I take with check, thinking I'm so clever, and then I take with the knight. So I don't have to move my queen because she's finally on this f3 square that I thought that I really wanted, and all of a sudden I have 4 pieces attacking my freaking e4 pawn. So I don't really know what to do here. But I decide what I'm going to do is this. Computer says this is an excellent move. What my thinking here was, as soon as that knight moves, I can come in, check with the bishop, king will have to move into the corner, I win the rook, and I'm up in exchange as soon as the knight moves. So what I wanted also was to have a rook over here because I can't defend this pawn. He's got 4 attackers against it. I only have 2 defenders. I can't get 4 defenders on it in one move. So I might as well abandon the pawn and try to go win a pawn of his, was my thinking here. And the computer says, yeah, that's a good move. So he starts stacking the rooks. He's just going to build up pressure on that file. Now, the only way for him to build up pressure on that file is to move the rook to this square. He can't move it to this square because the bishop kills it. So I see an opportunity to attack a more heavily valued piece with a lower value piece, go with it, and he plays a good move here, and I play a good move here. And he decides to continue to defend this rather than trying to take back with the knight. That's okay. But now I've got him in a defensive posture. And I just start pushing g4. We're going to kick that knight. Things are going to happen. Move the queen up in there. I am totally okay. If he decides that he wants to trade queens, that I'm just going to take with this pawn, and I'm going to have this nice pawn chain. And for him to come in with the rook to try to attack the pawn chain, I can cut that off with rook to f3 because the rook is defended by my bishop. Everything's good here. When I take with the bishop, then the bishop won't be in the way of my rook taking this pawn anymore. So I really like this queen trade a lot. And he blunders here. And then I blunder there. And then he takes, and I take, and he takes. But part of the reason that I was okay with the way that that exchange went down is because I was okay with this position. And I knew that he was going to go attack that pawn. And I knew I was going to pull the rook back to here. And what's really funny about this is that rook to d3 in this situation is actually the best move. That's right. Giving myself an isolated pawn is the best move here because it's a free pawn. It's passed. There are no barriers in between it and its freedom. In terms of other pawns. So I knew when I went through this sequence that we were going to get to this position. I knew there was no way that my opponent was not going to play what the most natural move is here and just go attack. And I knew that I liked this position. I knew that I was okay in this position because as we start working our way up the board, just moving up, taking up space, in the endgame situations, eventually your opponent's going to blunder. And I blundered, and he blunders, and then I get a great move. So see if you can understand in this position why this rook here is such a good move. And I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the resulting pawn structure that we can assume if things go our way after this. And then also, it further moves our passed pawn up. That's why this is such a good move. For black to take here and give us a pawn right here would be bad news for him. So he correctly runs, but he's running out of squares. With my rook on this column, he can't retreat anywhere here, and he can't take either one. If he takes there and my pawn takes, I'm in great shape. So he only has two places he can go. That's one of them. This is a sad state for his rook, and all of a sudden this advantage for white is crushing. I get the pawn structure I want. I can just play decoy, and then I can slip in here. This is game over. If you want to see how the rest of it plays out, we're waiting there. You can always play the waiting game. If he pushes this pawn over here, which is one of the only pawns he can push, we can take, and then we're away to freedom. Sorry about that. We're away to freedom. And if he pushes this pawn, we're going to take it. And so we can just play accordingly. Fun little mate coming up, just a little pattern to get this thing done as quickly as possible. If I take that pawn back, it's not exactly stalemate, because he can then push this one, but I don't have to worry about it. We can just mate like that. So I think that was the quickest way to do it. Really some interesting stuff. I thought I played a really clean game. I completely missed a way to just get an absolutely crushing attack against him. But some fun stuff in the middle game to really go back and wade through some really interesting ideas in the end game about assuming and taking on intentionally an isolated pawn, which also happens to be a passed pawn for you. It's even better in a situation like that if you can make sure that you have your rook lined up behind it. As long as you have your rook lined up there, then you're going to be okay. And either the king running behind it or the rook behind it. What I don't want is my rook over here in his territory and trying to run the pawn up that way. King is still defending this. The rook is still defending my back rank there. And I'm going to be able to walk through to multiple squares with my king, just depending on which way I go. And I have a blocker, like a running back needs a blocker. So really some interesting stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed that and it helped you play some better chess, some more interesting chess. Take a little bit more time in your middle game positions like I missed out on there, and hopefully do better, get better. We'll see you guys next time.